a method of transition system decomposition into sets of synchronizing free-choice Petri nets. In this presentation, you will see the motivations which brought us to the implementation of the decomposition, the background theory, the entire decomposition flow, the results we have reached, and lastly, the conclusion with the future work. Petri nets are widely used for the representation of concurrent behaviors. Among these, we can find the representation of data flows in high-level synthesis, like we can see on the left image, and the representation of communication protocols, like in the example on the right. These are only a part of possible Petri net applications. Traditionally, given transition system, a monolithic Petri net was produced. But this Petri net could be very big and intertwined. We want to extract small, structurally nice components. In our previous work, we implemented a decomposition flow generating a set of synchronizing state machines, which are Petri nets, such that for every transition there is exactly one incoming and one outgoing edge. Moreover, the initial marking has only one marked place. Indeed, in this decomposition we can see that each state machine contains only one token, differently from the monolithic Petri net, containing exactly 4 tokens, one for each parallel flow. Now we present an extension of our decomposition algorithm to free-choice Petri nets. Let's see why we wanted to extend the decomposition to free-choice Petri nets. On the sides, we have represented the choice structure. This basic structure can be modeled by both state machines and free-choice Petri nets. In the center instead, we have the synchronization of parallel flows. And here comes the big difference between the two models, the introduction of concurrency, which is a big limitation of state machines. Because of this limitation, a highly concurrent transition system should be converted into a lot of state machines, where each concurrent flow should be represented by a different state machine. But in case of free-choice Petri nets, some of concurrent flows can be incorporated into single components. As we have seen in this previous example, the decomposition into a set of synchronizing state machines generated 4 components, one for each concurrent flow. Meanwhile, the free-choice Petri net decomposition was able to contain 2 concurrent flows in the first Petri net, reducing the overall number of components from 4 to 3. Since we have chosen free-choice Petri nets, not all kinds of structures can be modeled by this. Indeed, asymmetric choice and confusion structures are forbidden. In the first case, we have a choice structure and one of the 2 involved in transitions has 2 incoming arcs, where one of the 2 places is not involved in any choice, like we can see in the upper place. In the second case, we instead have 2 choices with only one common transition. So, why we have chosen this kind of Petri nets? The reason is that free-choice Petri nets can keep a simple structure that tends to look alike state machines, avoiding cases with several arcs crossings, which could be found in general Petri nets, bringing to also a good visual representation. At the same time, free-choice Petri nets are enhanced by concurrency, which state machines doesn't have. Furthermore, in some cases, we have reduced complexity with respect to general Petri nets. Let's see some background theory essential for our decomposition flow. A region is a set of states where, given an event, all occurrences of the event have the same property. The property can be enter, like in case of event A, which has only one occurrence, exit, like in case of event C. In this case, we can see an event with multiple occurrences, and all of these have exit property with respect to the highlighted region. From the region point of view, the exit property for an event respect to a region means that the region is a pre-region for the event. Indeed, we can see how the states of the highlighted region activate the event C. And finally, no cross property, like for event B, which has one occurrence inside the region and the other completely outside it. Excitation closure property and excitation closed transition system are also very important definitions. Given excitation set of an event, which corresponds to the set of states that activate the event, excitation closure means that exists a set of regions which intersection is equal to excitation region. Let's see the example. For event A, we have directly a region R0 which corresponds to the state S0, the only state that activates A. For event B, we have a region R1 composed by S1 and S3. For event C, the region R2, and in case of event D, we don't have a region which corresponds to the state S4, but the intersection of R3 and R4 corresponds to S4. When for each region excitation closure is satisfied, we have an excitation closed transition system. In case of a transition system which is not excitation closed, a simple transformation can achieve this property. Therefore, we always can have an excitation closed transition system without limitations on the initial model. Let's see how the synchronization between the Petri nets works. Basically, the rules are the same of the synchronous product of the transition systems. Looking at the example, we have two Petri nets, Pn1 and Pn2, which represent two transition systems, Ts1 and Ts2. And on our right, we also have the synchronous product of these transition systems. For the synchronization, we can have two possible cases. In the first case, given an event, this one takes part of both Petri nets. Therefore, its activation in the synchronous product needs that the requirements for the activation would be satisfied in both Petri nets. Indeed, looking at event C, the only available case in the product is the activation from the combination of places R3 in the first Petri net and R5 in the second one. The second case occurs when the event takes part of only one of the two Petri nets. In this case, its activation depends only on its own Petri net, independently from the other. Looking at the example, we can see that event A can be activated when Pn1 has a token in R1, independently by the current marking in Pn2. Indeed, in the synchronous product of the transition systems, we have two cases where event A is activated. The first is the combination of places R1 and R4, and in the second case it's the combination of places R1 and R5. Given a set of regions, when can we create a Petri net with the behavior of the transition system used for the extraction of the regions? In this case, only one property is sufficient, and it's the excitation closure. Excitation closure allows to identify each excitation region like a unique combination of regions. This combination is represented by the region's intersection. With this property, we can notice the transition from a state-based model into an event-based one. Looking at the example, for the activation of the event D, in case of the transition system, it is sufficient to be in the state S4, which corresponds to the intersection of the regions R3 and R4. In the future Petri net, we will need a marking containing tokens in two places, one representing R3 and the other representing R4, to be able to fire the transition with event D. In order to extend the process to a set of Petri nets, we should add place connectedness property. Given a region, all incoming and outgoing events should take part of the resultant Petri net. Looking at the example, in this case we have the region R2, which is connected to event A and C. Both of them have to become transitions connected to the place R2. This property guarantees marking consistency, so if a region is represented by a place in two different Petri nets, in both cases the places will have the same connected events. Combining the two previously mentioned properties, excitation closure and place connectedness, we have proven that exists a bisimulation between the synchronous product of the Petri nets and the excitation closed transition system used for the generation of the regions. Therefore, we can assure that the behavior generated by the synchronization of Petri nets is the same of the initial transition system. In order to generate a set of free-choice Petri nets, starting from a set of regions extracted from a transition system, we should add another property to excitation closure and place connectedness. This property is free-choiceness. It means that given a set of regions which should represent a Petri net, the relation between selected regions and the events connected to the regions cannot create asymmetric choice and confusion structures. The application of this constraint to each set of regions representing a Petri net ensures that the selected Petri nets are free choice. Let's see how the decomposition works. Given a set of regions extracted from a transition system, we encode these as Boolean variables, and thanks to a SAT solver, we performed extraction of new free-choice Petri nets with the F formula, which consists in the satisfiability of previously mentioned properties, which are place connectedness and free-choiceness, and at the same time maximizing the usage of new regions. In this way, a pseudo-Boolean optimization problem is solved. We can see that the first Petri net has 5 new regions, since any region was previously used. The second one has only 3 new regions, and the last Petri net has only 1. This decreasing number for each consecutive Petri net is caused by the maximization function, which firstly picks sets with the maximum number of unused regions. As can be seen, some Petri nets share common regions. For example, the first Petri net and the second one share a region R1. That's because sometimes the regions activate common events of different free-choice Petri nets, therefore these cannot be removed. Or better, these should be picked by the algorithm. A previously mentioned very important property, which is excitation closure, is checked when a new free-choice Petri net is created. After the creation of new free-choice Petri net, if the excitation closure is satisfied, the generation stops, and we have a sufficient set of Petri nets to represent the behavior of the initial transition system. Indeed, it's important to notice that sometimes not all regions are necessary. The excitation closure could be satisfied using only a subset of them, like in this example, where one region is left unused. After having decomposed our transition system into a set of free-choice Petri nets, a post-optimization process is done. Sometimes we could find a set with completely redundant Petri nets. A greedy algorithm removes them. At this point, we still could have redundancy in the survived components. Therefore, these Petri nets are minimized, merging the regions. Let's see some results. We implemented both decomposition flows in our framework. Comparing the number of components derived from the decomposition into sets of state machines and the decomposition into sets of free-choice Petri nets, the derived number of components was decreased from 5.6 to 2.6. In cases where the number of free-choice Petri nets is equal to the number of state machines, like in the first case, the free-choice decomposition actually created a set of state machines. Usually it happens in cases where, in order to decrease the number of components, the synchronization of concurrent flows was not enough, but it would be necessary to complicate structures like asymmetric choice or confusion. In cases instead where we had a meaningful decrease in the number of components, like in the last example, shows how limiting was the sequential behavior of the state machines. It means also that the derived free-choice Petri nets are highly concurrent. An interesting observation that was revealed is that the addition of concurrency into the components did not require additional computational effort respect to the previously implemented flow. Also, the bottleneck is still the same, which corresponds to the generation of the regions. This procedure takes 90% of the computational time. Here we have the comparison between the number of places in percentage before the post-optimization process and after. We can see that this process is a very important part of the decomposition flow, since totally it removes 39% of places. In conclusion, we successfully extended the decomposition flow, including concurrency, without affecting the computational time. For the future, we want to extend the decomposition flow to other types of Petri nets, which could have very different kinds of properties, showing in this way also the flexibility of our decomposition flow. A good future improvement would be the parallelization of the regions generation, mitigating the current bottleneck. And lastly, we would like to apply the implemented flow to process mining, which should benefit a lot creating directly compact, structurally nice components. Thank you.